Welcome back, everybody, and welcome back to another video. Today we are answering one of the most famous questions in the NFL, and that is centered around the Madden curse. Now, if you don't know what the Madden curse is, basically, there's a myth or a rumor that every athlete who has been the cover of every Madden game has been cursed, has had something bad happen to them the next year or maybe 2 years later. And people believe it's because they were on the Madden cover. It's a huge thing. A lot of people are talking about it right now with Saquon being announced as the cover athlete of Madden 26. So I thought it'd be fun to kind of go through all 25 cover athletes since 2000 and see what the outcome was and see if all of these guys truly were cursed. Now, some of these might be a little controversial, so let me know in the comments if you guys disagree with any of these, if I'm reaching on any of these. I might be reaching a little bit, but if something bad did happen the next year, then I'm going to count it. So once again, let me know if I am reaching a little bit, or let me know your thoughts on some of these more controversial ones. And then at the end, we'll kind of go over some numbers and we'll decide if it's real or not. Now, I will say every single player, I have their career stats before they were on the cover and their career stats after. And just so you know, that does equate to a 17-game average when I factor those in. So let's just hop right into it. Starting off with Madden 2001, we had Eddie George, who was the running back for the Titans, on the cover. And he actually put up career highs after he was on the cover of Madden 2001. Now, he did drop in efficiency, if you notice that. So the year before, he averaged 4.1 yards per carry, and the year after, he averaged 3.7. He still played all 16 games, though, and he still put up career highs in rushing yards, touchdowns. He still had a good year on the receiving end of things, and was still a really good running back. He did dip after, and you'll notice this with almost every single athlete in this video. And some of these guys were covers after their rookie year or after their second year. But almost every single one of these guys dropped. Their stats after are noticeably worse than their stats before they were on the cover. I want to say this was like in the middle of Eddie George's career. But the efficiency definitely dropped. And he didn't look as good after he was on the cover and after he had that career year. Now, he did have statistically a career year. However, in the playoffs, he lost a huge fumble that lost the game for them in the divisional round. And in that case, I am going to say that they are cursed, or that Eddie George was cursed after this. I believe that fumble does come from this cover, and you guys can kill me if you want, but I'm saying that he was cursed by that. Next up, we have Madden NFL 2002 with Dante Culpepper, quarterback for the Vikings, and he had a immense drop-off after, definitely dealt with injuries. He suffered a knee injury that knocked him out for the rest of the year in the next season. He continued to struggle after that. Dante Culpepper did not have a very fun time after that. Went from throwing 33 touchdowns and 16 interceptions to 14 touchdowns and 13 interceptions within 11 games, had a losing record, and never played the same after that. You can look at his stats before and his stats after. Never played the same. His efficiency definitely dropped, and for that case, I'm saying that this definitely had an impact on his fall off of his career, and I'm saying that this cursed him. So far we are 2 for 2, and I would say this one is definitely a more heavier curse than Eddie George for sure, but we are still 2 for 2 so far. Next up, we have Madden NFL 2003 with Marshall Faulk on the cover, and this was towards kind of the twilight of his career. So it makes sense why he had a fall off, but he definitely did have a fall off immediately after this, immediately after being on the cover. Played the same amount of games, but had about 400 yards less rushing, had 4 less touchdowns, dipped in efficiency quite a bit. Still good on the receiving end, but you can tell didn't do as much with those receptions. And then his stats before and after is just night and day. This definitely started the fall off for Marshall Faulk just towards the end of his career. But I do think it's what kickstarted it. So I am saying Marshall Faulk is cursed. We are 3 for 3 so far, guys. Next up, we have Madden NFL 2004 with Michael Vick, quarterback from the Falcons, on the cover. And this was another one where he suffered an injury in the next season. And you'll see that is a trend in this. A lot of these guys either suffer an injury, they do a suspension, or something happens, they get sick, or something weird happens the next year. And Michael Vick is another example of that. So he went from playing 15 games to just 5 the next season, and that was towards the end of that year because he did fracture his fibula in the preseason and came back towards the end of the year. Still had a 3-1 record, which is good, and didn't play that bad, when he was healthy, but still missed a lot of that year. A lot of people were excited about Michael Vick. A lot of people were excited to see how he would grow, into year 3, and that didn't really help. I will say, he didn't have as big of a drop off as a lot of these guys did before and after he was on the cover in terms of his actual career. But that year that he had after being on the cover definitely cemented him as being cursed. We are 4 for 4 so far, guys. Next up, we have Madden NFL 2005 with Ray Lewis on the cover, and he went from playing. This was actually right after his Defensive Player of the Year campaign. I want to say it was his second Defensive Player of the Year. So this was right after the drop off, in stats the year after was to be expected, right? After having a year like he did, where he put up 163 tackles, 1.5 sacks, 7 tackle for losses, 6 interceptions, which is like a defensive back, 14 pass defense, and 2 forced fumbles. Pretty much cut that in half the next season. And like I said, I think that's to be expected after you're having a year like he did. But he still enjoyed a great career after that. If you look at the stats before and after, yeah, they might be slightly worse, but honestly, they're pretty much on par. So I don't really think this affected him at all. We have our first non-cursed player with Ray Lewis from the Baltimore Ravens, who I believe did not let it affect him. Now, you could say, right, he did have the controversy surrounding him, and I'm a Ravens fan, so, I'm not trying to sound biased, but he did have the controversy surrounding him in killing somebody. Whether that's true or not, some people might relate that to the curse. I don't remember exactly when that happened, but I'm going to say in terms of his career, which it didn't really affect him, he wasn't cursed. Next up, we have Madden NFL 2006 with another quarterback in Donovan McNabb from the Eagles. And this was another one, suffered injuries and just kind of weird turmoil going on. He didn't really talk to his top target, Terrell Owens. And I don't think it was really his fault. Terrell Owens was kind of being a diva the beginning of that season with the entire team, but it didn't really help. They still played well, though. Terrell Owens was still toward the top in receiving yardage, and Donovan McNabb still played well, at the beginning of the season with him, even through all those distractions. He had a hernia that he was playing through. Then he lost 4 straight games, threw so many interceptions, just played horribly, and then got placed on IR with a groin injury, which if you look at his efficiency, running the ball before and after being on the cover, it drops immensely. And even the year before and year after, playing through an injury, you could just tell that he wasn't too comfortable running the ball as well as he normally is. But yeah, went from averaging 6.3 yards every time he scrambled to 4.4, dropped his rushing yardage average in more than half, and definitely started losing more games. I mean, the fall off was definitely immense. He did have more passing yards, but this was towards the beginning of his career, so I'm not really putting too much on that. But yeah, went from having a 13-2 record to a 4-5 record. It pretty much speaks for itself. Had to deal with injuries and drama. I'm saying Donovan McNabb is cursed. Madden NFL 2007 with Sean Alexander gracing the cover from the Seattle Seahawks. And this, once again, this one pretty much speaks for itself from a numbers standpoint. Went from almost 1,900 yards and 27 touchdowns to 900 yards and 7 touchdowns. Only played 10 games, but still the efficiency dropped in those games that he played. He was playing through a broken foot as well and just dealt with health issues throughout that season. His all-pro offensive lineman Stephen Hutchinson left that offseason that he was on the cover, so that definitely had something to do with it. But his stats before and after for his career definitely a lot worse, and dipped in efficiency, went from 4.6 yards per carry to 3.5 yards per carry. His receiving yardage definitely got cut in half and more than half. And yeah, he just wasn't as efficient, wasn't as electric. And so I'm saying that this cover definitely cursed him in his career. Guys, we've only had one non-cursed player so far. Next up, we have Madden NFL 08 with Vince Young, another rushing quarterback that's on the cover from the Tennessee Titans. And he was on the cover a year after throwing 12 touchdowns and 13 interceptions. So it's kind of weird. They did go 8-5, and he was very good at running the ball, obviously, and pretty highly touted college player. So I do get the hype, but never really was amazing statistically before this. I want to say this might have been, this was right after his rookie year. So he was only in the NFL for one season. But immediately after, played the same amount of games, but the turnovers were just ridiculous. 17 interceptions to just 9 touchdowns. Still somehow had a winning record at 9-6. But wasn't as efficient running the ball either. He broke a team rule, and it was a dumb team rule. I think it was something like he went to go visit his parents instead of being at the team's hotel or something like that. It was stupid, but still broke a team rule, and he was benched because of it at the beginning of the season. He struggled statistically, and then he suffered an injury that did cause him to miss a game, but nothing too crazy. He still played most of the season, just struggled a lot. But yeah, I mean, his stats after threw a little bit more passing yards, but he didn't really last too long in the NFL. Vince Young didn't, so I am saying that this cover cursed him for his career. Sorry, guys. Madden NFL 09, Brett Favre. We're keeping the streak going. Another quarterback, and this was kind of an awkward cover for him because this was probably one of the worst off seasons of his life. He had off and on drama, turmoil with the Packers all off season. Packers were saying this. It was like a he said, she said stuff, bullshit that was happening with the Packers where Brett Favre was saying, oh no, I still want to keep playing, or no, I don't want to keep playing. The Packers are saying the opposite thing. It was just really dumb. The Packers were ready to move on with Aaron Rodgers. Brett Favre wasn't ready to move on. The Packers were. And it was just a lot of BS going on. There's actually 2 covers released for this. I want to say there was one released, for sure there was one released where he was on the Packers. And then I want to say they changed it because then they found out he was being traded to the Jets when the Packers finally let him go. So he was traded to the Jets, lost his starting position to Aaron Rodgers, had 2 different covers released of him because he was on 2 different teams that offseason. And his efficiency just took a fucking nosedive into the toilet bowl when he was in New York. Threw 22 touchdowns to 22 interceptions with this Jameis Winston-esque stat line. Had a 9-7 record and didn't throw as many, his passing yardage went down a lot. He just was not as efficient whatsoever. And yeah, I want to, this was towards the twilight of his career. Obviously, he wasn't on the Packers anymore. He'd been in the NFL for a long time. He was wanting to retire. He was questioning, retiring, going back and forth. So, this was his Jets and Vikings days, but still dipped in efficiency after. And I would definitely say that this cursed him. He went to the Jets for a year. Then the Jets dumped him and didn't want him. It wasn't a good time for Brett Favre for sure. So I'm saying that he is cursed. Madden NFL 10, and now we have our first cover with 2 cover athletes, and this was such an iconic cover, such a good time for Madden in general. But we have Troy Polamalu and Larry Fitzgerald. Obviously, one is a safety from the Steelers. Larry Fitzgerald's a wide receiver from the Cardinals. And for these guys, I just put their before and after stats of the season before and the season after. And, one of them I'd say was cursed. The other one I would say isn't cursed. Larry Fitzgerald definitely dipped in efficiency. He went from 14.9 yards per catch to 11.3 yards per catch. I don't really put that on him, though. I don't blame that on him. He still played all 16 games. He didn't suffer an injury. He was still consistent. So I'm not saying that it cursed him. But Troy Polamalu, it definitely did hit. He played amazing when he was healthy. I mean, in 5 games, he had 3 picks, 7 pass defense, and 4 tackle for losses, which is just ridiculous. and their defense definitely dropped off after he got hurt. But he still suffered an MCL injury in his knee and then re-injured his knee in his return, and missed the rest of the season because he was told by a team doctor that if he kept playing, he might suffer a career-ending injury. So yeah, that season definitely hit him hard, and I'm saying that they were half cursed. Troy Polamalu being the cursed one and Larry Fitzgerald being the non-cursed one. So far, we only have 2 cover athletes who were not cursed by this. Next up, we have Madden NFL 11 with Drew Brees from the Saints on the cover. And he did throw a lot of interceptions, 22 picks the year after, but he still led the Saints to the playoffs. He still started all 16 games. And look at his career totals after he was on the cover. It did not affect him whatsoever. So this one's pretty easy. Such a good cover. This was when, Madden really, really was in its prime. Not only were the games really good, but the covers were really good. They were iconic. They were creative. And I just don't get that feeling anymore. So iconic cover, Drew Brees broke the curse, and I'm saying that he was not cursed. Some people might say, yeah, he threw 22 picks. That's not very Drew Brees-like, but I'm saying he wasn't cursed. Next up, we have Madden NFL 12 with probably one of the most random covers of all time with Peyton Hillis. People who really know ball know Peyton Hillis, know this cover, how iconic it was at the time. And honestly, I will say, out of all of these covers from this time period, this is probably my favorite. I don't know why. I like the orange. I like, it just looks like a good football game cover. I think they did well with this one. And even though Peyton Hillis isn't a household name, I kind of like that. I like how it's not a superstar player that everybody knows. This is probably my favorite cover in Madden of all time. But anyways, this curse definitely hit him hard after this. The year before, he had 1,200 rushing yards, 11 touchdowns, 4.4 yards per carry. Kind of broke out of nowhere. And then the year after, it was just a weird year. Averaged 3.6 yards per carry, only had 3 touchdowns. He started the season with contract disputes with the Browns. His agent told him to sit out a game due to a strep throat, which I've never heard of that stopping a football player before. And then he injured his hamstring twice. And then eventually the Browns, just decided to let him go to free agency. Didn't even want to re-sign him. So he was just kind of left to his own device in free agency to sign with another team. I believe he went to the Chiefs, but he never did anything after that. As you can tell from his career totals, he only averaged 3.6 yards per carry the rest of the way and dipped in efficiency. Yeah, the Madden curse definitely hit him hard, and he was definitely more vulnerable to it because he was kind of a random breakout player, and we kind of see this a lot with those guys. But yeah, I would say that he was cursed. Next up, we have Madden NFL 13 with one of my favorite players of all time, Calvin Johnson, on the cover from the Detroit Lions. And we have our first player who honestly kind of got away scot-free. Not only did he not get hurt the next year, he actually put up better numbers, career highs, and absolutely balled out after this point in his career. His numbers got better after being on the cover. This is kind of the first outlier that we have. Almost put up 2,000 yards receiving on 16.1 yards per catch with Matthew Stafford at quarterback. And averaged 105 catches for his 17-game average after being on the cover. This dude completely destroyed the curse, completely showed the curse who's boss, and absolutely dominated. Calvin Johnson was not cursed. That's 4 players, I believe, so far who were not affected by the curse. Next up, we have Madden NFL 25 with Adrian Peterson. Now, this is the 2014 version of Madden NFL 25, or 2013, whenever it came out, because Madden, EA is just, they're very interesting. Let me just say that. They're a very interesting business. Didn't really expect to be making games into 2025, I guess, because we have another Madden NFL 25, but this was the 25th anniversary of Madden. That's why it's called that. But this curse definitely hit Adrian Peterson hard. Now, there was technically 2 cover athletes. The Madden 25 that I had Barry Sanders on the cover, I remember. But Barry Sanders wasn't even playing at the time, so I'm not factoring him in, but Adrian Peterson was an active player. And this was right after, I'm like 1,000% sure, right after his MVP season, which was the last non-quarterback MVP season that we've had, which is just absolutely crazy. But anyways, had about 2,100 rushing yards, 12 rushing touchdowns, 6 yards per carry. 6 yards per carry through a 16-game season is ridiculous. Had one of the best running back seasons of all time. And then it just fell off. He still averaged 4.5 yards per carry. He was still explosive. He still had 1,300 rushing yards, but compared to his year before, it makes it look small. Still a really good running back season, of course. But if you look at his stats before and after for his career, it definitely was the start, the beginning of the end for Adrian Peterson, and the beginning of drama mainly. So sadly, and I didn't want to put this for, his reason to be cursed. I don't want to seem insensitive, but sadly, and I never knew this either, he did lose a son that he had. I believe he was 2 years old at the time, and that happened during this next season. I want to, it wasn't child abuse from Adrian Peterson directly, but it was, from whoever, the baby mama was with or whatever at the time. And it's just really sad. He did lose a son during this time where he missed, some games. And then later that offseason, not the offseason where he was the cover, but the offseason after, he was indicted on child abuse charges himself, which obviously I knew that. I just realized I put Chargers, my bad. Obviously I remember that, but I did not remember him, actually losing a son, which is really sad and, really unfortunate. But yeah, like I said, I don't want to seem insensitive. I did think it was important to mention because, like I said, I've never known that. I don't know if you guys have ever known that. But I will say that this did affect his career, even numbers-wise, if you put the drama away. But I will say that he was cursed by this. Next up, we have Madden NFL 15 with Richard Sherman on the cover. And Richard Sherman was one of the biggest names in the NFL at the time, so this made sense. This was right after their dominant win over the Broncos in Super Bowl 48. And yeah, he was the best corner in the NFL. He was the best defensive back in the NFL by far. And he actually, still had a good year the next year. Wasn't as crazy as the year before, but still a really good year. He had 57 tackles, 4 picks, 8 pass defense, and 1 forced fumble. His numbers kind of got cut in half a little bit, but he still, played well after this for his career. Not as good, of course. I mean, like I said, a lot of these players just have drop-offs after they're on the cover. But yeah, after he only had 3 picks, or averaged 3 picks to 7 picks, 10 pass defense, 20 pass defense. So it kind of gets cut in half a little bit. But he still played well. Now, originally I had Richard Sherman not cursed, but then I remembered this was also the year that they lost to the New England Patriots by a red zone interception from Malcolm Butler at the 1-yard line. One of the most heartbreaking losses in the big game ever, possibly the most heartbreaking loss, in the Super Bowl ever. I'd say right up there with the Titans being at the 1-yard line. But yeah, I don't know. To me, and then also one of the most iconic clips from that time period was Richard Sherman on the sideline, literally looking like he's about to cry. He probably did cry, but the reaction from him on the sideline, just being like, "What the fuck," is one of the most iconic things to come from this game. So I am saying that unfortunately proves that he was cursed by this cover. Madden NFL 16, we have Odell Beckham Jr. on the cover, one of the biggest names in sports as well. Odell, after his rookie year, which this cover, he was named the cover athlete after his rookie year. Yeah, he was one of the biggest names in sports, one of the most hyped up names in sports. So it made so much sense. They put the iconic one-handed catch on there. This was a good time for Madden as well. One of my favorite covers. But anyways, the year after, he still had a good year. He put up a career high in receiving yards and receiving touchdowns and yards per catch, catches. He did play more games, so technically he was more efficient in his rookie year. But I'm not factoring that in. His stats before and after are definitely a little bit different. definitely had a bit of a fall off, and Odell definitely, took advantage of those early years in his career where he was on top of the NFL. And then kind of when he went to Cleveland was the start of the fall off. So that was a little bit after being on the cover. He was suspended one game the next season. That's why he only played 15 games, but he still put up career highs. I don't really think that affected him too much. He was still one of the biggest names in sports after his sophomore year. So I am saying that he is not cursed from this cover. And next up, we have Madden NFL 17 with Rob Gronkowski on the cover, tight end from the New England Patriots. And I want to say the first tight end from this video so far. Might be the only tight end on the cover in NFL history, in Madden history, I should say. But it definitely hit him hard as well. And his body just got absolutely destroyed in 2016. He took that shot from Earl Thomas in the chest, injured his hamstring. He suffered a pulmonary contusion, which I believe might have been from Earl Thomas, and then a back injury that would require surgery and took him out for the rest of the year. He only played 8 games. I think he only started like 6 of those, and only put up 25 catches for 540 yards and 3 receiving touchdowns, which only starting 8 games and putting up 540 receiving yards is still pretty good. I mean, this was prime Gronk, don't get me wrong, but he still missed time, and I'm definitely saying that he was cursed from this. Didn't average as many touchdowns, dropped in efficiency after this for his 17-game average. So unfortunately, this cover did curse Rob Gronkowski. They still won Super Bowls after this, though. Don't get me wrong. They still won Super Bowls, and Rob still had a fantastic career, but the efficiency definitely dropped. But the next year, we saw another Patriot on the cover, and this time it was Tom Brady, who surprisingly wasn't the cover of Madden until this point in his career. This is, pretty well into his playing career, but his stats before and after pretty much remain the same. And so statistically, this wasn't a curse, right? This was right after he was suspended those 4 games for Deflategate, and he kind of came back on a rampage with 28 touchdowns, 2 picks, had an 11-1 record. But I will say, this also, the season after he was on the cover was also the year that they lost to Nick Foles in the Super Bowl, which was just one of the most shocking sports stories to ever happen, one of the most shocking Super Bowl losses to ever happen. He had already lost to the Giants twice in heartbreaking fashion, and this time he lost to a backup quarterback who was written off as one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL just a year prior. And I'm saying that he was cursed, unfortunately. One of the craziest things that happen in sports happens to Tom Brady right after he's on the cover. Next up, we have Madden NFL 19 with Antonio Brown from the Pittsburgh Steelers. And honestly, the Madden curse kind of hit him the hardest. And it wasn't necessarily right after he was on the cover, but kind of just events after. Statistically, he was still pretty good. He had 15 receiving touchdowns the year after, had more catches in one more game, mind you. He wasn't as efficient yardage-wise, but still had a lot of touchdowns. And his 17-game average is a little bit inflated because he had games with the Patriots here and there. I think he had 1 game with the Patriots. He had a couple games with the Buccaneers here and there where he actually did play decently well. So it kind of inflates his 17-game average a bit, but it doesn't take away from the amount of drama that surrounded this guy for the next 3 or 4 years. I want to say 3 years. He received a dirty hit from Vontaze Burfict. It was a very dirty hit when they were playing the Bengals, straight to the head. A lot of people contribute this, unfortunately, to Antonio Brown's CTE problem. He got into an argument after this towards the end of the season with his quarterback, Ben Roethlisberger, started skipping practices, and then it led to a benching. He didn't play towards the end of the year, and then reports started surfacing that it was all very just one thing after another. I remember this time period, and then reports started surfacing that he wanted out. The Steelers trade him to the Raiders, who I don't remember if they were Oakland or Las Vegas at the time, but he gets traded to the Raiders. Then he has drama surrounding his helmet and what helmet he's going to wear. Ends up getting released by the Raiders before the season even starts, signs with the Patriots, gets released by the Patriots, and the rest of the story. Ends up on the Buccaneers with Tom Brady later on, and then runs off the field naked. I mean, not completely naked, but with his underwear. It was just such a weird end to his career for a player who was so dominant And I would say that this definitely hit him pretty hard. He was very cursed from this cover. Next up, we have Madden NFL 20 with Patrick Mahomes on the cover, and definitely took a dip in efficiency. This was right after his sophomore year. He only played one game in his rookie year, where he filled in for Alex Smith, and not a lot of people really took anything from that. But as soon as he started in his sophomore year, he lit the NFL on fire, literally immediately. I want to say he threw like 5 or 6 touchdowns in his first game. But anyways, I'm just ranting. His efficiency definitely dropped from that insane year, but he still took the Chiefs to the playoffs, and he ended up winning his first Super Bowl after being on the cover. So just automatically, he did miss games too. He injured. He dealt with 2 different injuries, one being his patella, but he still won his first Super Bowl. So you can't take anything away from that. He definitely was not cursed from this. Next up, we have Madden NFL 21 with Lamar Jackson on the cover. This was right after his sophomore year as well, where he kind of took the league by storm. 1,200 rushing yards from a quarterback is just absolutely ridiculous, while throwing 36 touchdowns as well, mind you. This was right after the Ravens' 14-2 season, where they unfortunately lost to the Titans in the divisional round. Don't remind me of that. It was pretty horrific. But anyways, I wouldn't say that this affected him at all. He did catch COVID-19 and miss a game the next season. And then he did throw a costly pick 6 and, suffered a concussion against the Bills. You could argue that Lamar was cursed from this, but looking back, and, I'm saying this as a Ravens fan, and unfortunately I'm saying this, looking back through Lamar's playoff history, this isn't out of the norm. Like this pick 6 that he threw and, them choking a little bit to the Bills, it's just not out of the norm. So unfortunately, I'm not saying that he was cursed because it happened to him the year before he was on the cover, where they played horribly in the playoffs, and he did not play well in that game. And it happened after this season. So it's not out of the norm. I'm not going to dial it up, him throwing that pick 6 to the Madden curse. So I'm saying he wasn't cursed, especially since he's still been playing at an MVP level. He won MVP last year, should have won it this year, in my opinion. Just went absolutely ham this year. But I'm not saying Lamar was cursed from this. Next up, we have our second and our final 2-athlete cover with Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes. And this one is pretty simple, and one that I guess if I had to pick like Madden 17 and on, until now, I'd say this probably was my favorite just because it's iconic. You had 2 of the biggest quarterbacks in the sport at the time. They had just went toe-to-toe in the Super Bowl, which Tom Brady had won, by the way. And so I think it's pretty iconic. It's a cool cover. It's simple, but anyways, I'm saying this one's half cursed as well. Now, Patrick Mahomes did not get hurt the year after, but he threw and turned the ball over a lot. Tom Brady received surgery at the beginning of the season. He did lose in the divisional round, but he still was the only reason they were in that game. They went down like 24 points or something, and Tom Brady came back, almost won the game for them, but they did end up losing. And then Patrick Mahomes had the most amount of turnovers in one season of his career at that time. So a full season, he had the most amount of turnovers in one season, just 7 games in. So that's not counting the final 10 games that he played. And then he threw a game-losing interception in overtime of the AFC divisional round. So I'm saying that it did curse him in that season. And the reason I'm saying that, right, because you could say I'm reaching. He still threw 4,800 passing yards, 37 touchdowns, took his team to the AFC divisional round, right? But the reason I'm saying that he was cursed is because this was out of the norm. The Chiefs at the time were dominant. They had just been to 2 Super Bowls. They kind of cemented themselves as the new Patriots of the AFC. They were going to go, they played well in the playoffs. You expected them to go to the playoff or to the Super Bowl almost every year. And this year was one of the biggest outliers in the past 7 or 8 years of Super Bowl history, because you had the Bengals and the Rams in the Super Bowl, which looking back now is super refreshing, because since then we've had the Chiefs and the Eagles, the Chiefs and the 49ers, the Chiefs and the Eagles, and then this Super Bowl. I want to say. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's been the past 4 Super Bowls. And then the year before that, you have the Bucks and the Chiefs, and then you have the Chiefs and the 49ers. It's always been the Chiefs, except for this one season right after where Patrick Mahomes uncharacteristically threw an interception to lose the game in overtime. So I'm saying that the curse did hit him. But Tom Brady, nothing was really out of the norm. He played all 17 games. I'm not saying he was cursed. Now, we do skip Madden NFL 23 because it was John Madden himself on the cover, and RIP, he already passed away. And obviously he was a coach and wasn't even coaching at the time. So, we're not counting that. But we are going to skip to Madden NFL 24 with Josh Allen on the cover, who put up a much worse statistical season. Now, he did have 15 rushing touchdowns. So before you go diving into the comment section, he did have 15 rushing touchdowns the next year, but dipped in efficiency running the ball. Had a lot of turnovers that season. This was the year where they fired their offensive coordinator. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but they went through a really bad stretch where people thought they were going to miss the playoffs, which was really out of the norm for them. And then they got Joe Brady, went on a good winning stretch, got into the playoffs, and made it all the way back to the Chiefs. They had the Chiefs at home, had so many chances to win the game, and then they lost by a missed field goal to the Chiefs in a divisional round in heartbreaking fashion. I am saying that they are cursed, unfortunately. It wasn't even a flag this time. They purely just lost to them because they missed a field goal. It was really sad. And then next up we have Madden NFL 25 with Christian McCaffrey on the cover, and this was the cover. So this is the last cover we're going to talk about, right? Because this is the last one we have stats for and proof for. But this was the one that just really reignited the Madden curse after Christian McCaffrey had the year that he had. Because it didn't really hit Josh Allen hard. I'm just saying it cursed him because he lost to the Chiefs at home in one of the best situations he could have beaten them in. But with Christian McCaffrey, he started the season with an Achilles injury. He came back in week 10, played a couple games, then he got hurt again, put on IR, and just didn't really look very good. He didn't even score a single touchdown in those 4 games, which is very un-Christian McCaffrey-like. His stats definitely dropped off after that. And we'll have to see if it affects his career after this point. How is Christian McCaffrey going to come back next season? It'll definitely be very interesting, but it has definitely cursed him. Even if he comes back and plays at his normal form, this past season would be such a big outlier. It definitely cursed him for that year. So, that's been all of the cover athletes since 2000. And like I said, Christian McCaffrey has really reignited this, and we'll have to see if it hits Saquon this year. It'll be very interesting to watch. Now let's hop into some numbers, okay? Let's end this with some numbers. So 18 out of the 27 cover athletes were cursed. That's 67%, which is above 50%, which is already a lot. Now 15 out of 27, 56%, suffered an injury or served a suspension or got sick the next season. 20 out of 27 athletes, which is 74%, experienced a dip in efficiency immediately right after that. And 93% experienced one of those 3 the very next season, which is kind of crazy. Maybe it's just in my head. Maybe if you look at some athletes who were at the top of their game, which a lot of these guys were when they were the cover athlete, maybe this is just a normal thing that happens. And we're only looking at it because they were on the cover. But 93%, that means only 2 players were not completely affected by this, and those 2 players are the GOATs, Calvin Johnson and Tom Brady. So Calvin Johnson, obviously, right after Madden 13, he put up career highs. He had a better half of his career after that, and he was still dominant. He didn't get hurt or anything. And Tom Brady, it was right after his Super Bowl winning year. This is when he was the co-cover with Patrick Mahomes. Still put up good numbers. Still led his team to the playoffs and did not miss a single game to injury. So these are the only 2 guys that completely broke the Madden curse. So it is possible. It is possible, Saquon. I will say running backs are definitely more prone to the curse, but it is possible. So is it real or is it in our heads? Guys, I'm going to let you decide. To me, it seems like it definitely has an effect on the player's career, because if you look at their stats before and after, their averages before and after, I would say almost all of them dip. Almost all of them get worse. You know, maybe not Drew Brees. Drew Brees was the only player off the top of my head that actually had a better stat line and better average after he was on the cover. But it definitely seems like it has an effect on them. Now, it could just be in our heads because, like I said, it could happen to every player who's at the top of their game in their career, and it's just a normal thing. But to me, it definitely seems to have some sort of effect, and there could be some sort of traction on this. So let me know in the comments, is the Madden curse real? Is it a real thing, or are we all just overthinking it and making this shit up? Guys, thank you so much for watching. If you guys like this sort of content, please subscribe, leave a like if you guys liked this video, this case study. It was a lot of fun to make, a lot of fun to do some research on these guys, and just Madden covers in general are fun. So let me know what you guys think. If you guys think the Madden curse is real, I will see you guys in the next one. Probably do another redraft of some sort. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching.